When wealthy Dubai developer Rohan Malik married bright American marketing executive Emily Carter, the world saw a perfect couple. But their dream honeymoon in Bora Bora turned into a nightmare no one could have imagined. They were introduced to the world as the perfect couple, a match that seemed pulled from the glossy pages of a luxury magazine. He was a successful Dubai property developer, a man who had risen from modest beginnings to command vast towers and beachfront estates. With a polished smile and an aura of confidence, he drew attention wherever he went. She was a young American woman, graceful and intelligent, who had built her own career in marketing. Her charm was effortless, her warmth drawing people in instantly. Their love story began at a high-end business conference in New York, where their meeting felt like fate. She admired his ambition, his decisiveness, and the grand lifestyle he offered. He, in turn, was captivated by her beauty and independence, seeing her as the missing piece to his carefully crafted life of success. Their romance moved quickly. Lavish trips, glittering dinners, and long weekends in private resorts defined their courtship. To friends, it appeared like a fairy tale that unfolded in fast motion, a whirlwind too perfect to doubt. Soon after, the announcement of their engagement lit up their social circles, and everyone agreed they were destined for greatness together. The wedding was no less spectacular, an opulent celebration with crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and guests flown in from across the globe. The photographs painted an image of pure happiness, her white gown shimmering under the lights, his tailored suit marking him as a man of wealth and power. In that moment, it seemed as though nothing could taint their union. They were admired, envied, and celebrated as the embodiment of modern romance. Yet behind every flawless picture lies the possibility of hidden cracks, silent and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Their honeymoon destination was chosen with precision, a place that embodied romance and exclusivity. Bora Bora, with its turquoise waters and iconic overwater bungalows, promised the kind of escape most couples only dream of. From the moment they arrived, it was a picture of luxury. The ocean stretched endlessly in shades of blue. The air carried the scent of salt and tropical flowers, and the horizon glowed golden as the sun melted into the sea. Resort staff greeted them with fresh leis and cold drinks, ushering them to a private villa perched on stilts above the lagoon. To outsiders, it looked like the start of a dream that would last forever. Every detail was shared on social media. Sunset dinners with candles flickering against the waves, champagne glasses raised against the backdrop of the sky, and pictures of the bride in flowing dresses that caught the island breeze. Their followers admired every image, showering them with praise for living a life so enviable. But beneath the curated snapshots, the atmosphere carried small signs of unease. His hand sometimes gripped hers too tightly, his eyes sharp when she laughed too freely with others. She often glanced away, as though unsure whether to smile for the camera or retreat into silence. Still, the beauty of Bora Bora distracted most observers. Guests at the resort noticed the couple as radiant newlyweds, stealing kisses in public and lounging by the infinity pool. They blended perfectly into the landscape of romance the island promised. Yet inside the villa, hidden from curious eyes, silence replaced laughter more often than not. The paradise setting could not erase the growing tension, and though no one could yet see it, the seeds of tragedy had already been planted in the shadow of paradise. The first days of the honeymoon carried the glow of excitement, but as the hours stretched on, the cracks in their picture-perfect bond began to show. At first, it was little things, a dismissive comment, a sharp glance, or an impatient sigh. She wanted to explore the island, take long walks on the beach, and experience the culture. He preferred to remain in the villa, expecting her to follow his plans without question. When she voiced her wishes, he grew tense, his smile fading into a cold expression that made her retreat. Soon, those small disagreements grew into heated moments. Guests at the resort noticed her laughter seemed rehearsed, as if she was performing happiness instead of living it. Staff recalled her hesitation when asked simple questions, as though she feared saying the wrong thing. He, on the other hand, carried himself with dominance, his presence filling every room with authority. For him, love seemed to mean control, while for her, it meant freedom. Their definitions collided with a force neither could ignore. At night, the quiet villa became a place of tension rather than rest. She wrote brief notes in her journal, reflecting feelings of unease, though she kept the words vague, as if afraid of them being discovered. The long hours by the lagoon, once filled with affectionate gestures, shifted into silence, with each partner staring into the distance rather than into each other's eyes. Even in paradise, shadows began to form around them. What outsiders still perceived as bliss was slowly unraveling into a private battle. The honeymoon that should have been a chapter of joy had already begun its descent into conflict, with every unspoken word adding weight to the fragile union. The night that would shatter everything arrived with an unexpected storm. Heavy rain lashed against the villa's glass windows, and thunder rolled across the lagoon, masking the rising tension inside. What began as a familiar disagreement quickly escalated into something far darker. She had grown tired of his constant control, and her resistance, small as it was, ignited his temper like fuel to fire. The sound of raised voices was drowned out by the storm, leaving no witness to the growing violence within those walls. In a sudden rush of anger, he lashed out. The first blow stunned her, but it was only the beginning. His rage spiraled beyond reason, and each strike grew heavier, more brutal, as if he was determined to break not only her spirit, but her very existence. She tried to shield herself, but there was no escape. The room that had once been filled with flowers and candlelight transformed into a place of horror. The bride, once glowing with life and promise, was left battered and motionless on the polished floor. When the storm outside finally began to calm, silence fell inside the villa as well. The air was heavy, filled with the remnants of chaos, the overturned furniture, and the sharp metallic scent of blood. He stood over her body, breath ragged, the reality of what he had done sinking in like a weight too heavy to bear. The paradise that had been meant to mark the beginning of their life together had instead become the setting of its violent end. Bora Bora's beauty continued undisturbed outside, but within that villa, a nightmare had unfolded that would soon shock the world. The dream honeymoon had ended in irreversible tragedy. Panic washed over him as the reality of what he had done settled in. The idyllic honeymoon, meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, had been irreversibly shattered by violence. Every instinct screamed for him to cover his actions, to make it appear as though nothing had gone wrong. He dragged her body across the villa floor, arranging it near the balcony as though she had slipped during the storm. The careful positioning of furniture and props seemed to form a story meant to convince anyone who discovered her that it was a tragic accident. He cleaned himself quickly, changing his clothes to erase traces of the struggle, and rehearsed the lines he would tell the resort staff. When they arrived, he was calm, composed, and seemingly devastated. He spoke of the storm, of the slick floors, of a misstep that had led to a fatal fall. Staff, unfamiliar with the couple's private tensions, accepted his explanation without question. Guests nearby continued to enjoy the evening, oblivious to the violence that had occurred just a few meters away. But despite his careful arrangements, subtle inconsistencies began to surface. Small details that he had overlooked, the pattern of bruises, the placement of objects, the broken glass hidden in the shadows, hinted that this was no accident. Every attempt to manipulate reality was like a thread pulled too tightly, threatening to unravel completely. Even in a paradise far from home, truth has a way of breaking through carefully constructed lies. As he tried to maintain control, the villa itself seemed to bear witness to the events, the silent walls holding evidence of rage and tragedy that no act of deception could erase. His cover-up, meticulous as it seemed, was only the beginning of the unraveling that would soon expose him to the world. The first cracks in his story began to appear almost immediately. Local authorities arrived quickly after resort staff reported unusual noises and strange circumstances surrounding her death. At first, he maintained his calm composure, repeating the same story about the storm and her supposed slip. But investigators were thorough, trained to look beyond appearances and detect even the smallest inconsistencies. Forensic teams examined the scene with meticulous attention, noting bruises and injuries that could not have been caused by a simple fall. Surveillance footage revealed movements that contradicted his version of events. Cameras captured him leaving the villa multiple times that night, his clothes changed and damp, his actions hurried and suspicious. Staff interviews revealed fragments of conversations and strange behavior, the sound of heavy thuds, doors slamming, and muffled cries that had been dismissed at the time as the storm. Investigators began piecing together a timeline, comparing his statements with physical evidence, photographs, and medical reports. Among the most damning discoveries was her private journal, which she had kept hidden during the honeymoon. Its pages chronicled moments of fear, frustration, and isolation, a quiet record of her growing unease with the man she had recently married. She had written about feeling trapped, about small incidents that made her question his temper and his control. Every entry reinforced the suspicion that the fatal event was not an accident, but the result of escalating violence. The investigation quickly gained momentum. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, and each detail from her personal writings began to converge into a narrative that painted him not as a grieving husband, but as a man whose rage had crossed deadly boundaries. The paradise that had once hidden their conflicts now became the very stage where the truth was revealed. What he had tried so carefully to conceal was now being brought to light. The arrest sent shockwaves through the resort and across international headlines. Guests who had only days before admired the couple's seeming perfection now watched as the man once celebrated as a successful developer was handcuffed and led away. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail. The sharp contrast between his polished appearance just hours earlier and the stark reality of the criminal investigation closing in. Staff and visitors alike whispered, struggling to reconcile the image of a charming, confident husband with the man accused of murder. Authorities carefully coordinated the arrest to ensure there was no opportunity for escape or destruction of evidence. His attempts to manipulate the scene had failed, and the evidence collected during the investigation left no room for doubt. Surveillance footage, forensic reports, and witness accounts converged into a case that investigators described as overwhelming. Even his carefully curated reputation, built over years of business dealings and social appearances, could not shield him from the law. International media seized on the story, portraying it as a scandal of wealth, power, and betrayal. Headlines splashed across newspapers, websites, and social media. Dubai developer arrested in wife's death in Bora Bora. Honeymoon turns deadly. Paradise murder exposed. Public fascination with the case grew rapidly, fueled by the stark contrast between the glamorous life he projected and the violent crime he had allegedly committed. Family members tried to intervene, leveraging connections and influence, but their efforts were futile. The authorities were resolute, determined to see justice served. The arrest became a turning point, not just in the investigation but in the life of the accused. His empire, carefully built over years, began to crumble almost immediately. The illusion of control he had maintained was gone, replaced by handcuffs, interrogation rooms, and the looming certainty of legal consequences. The paradise of Bora Bora, once a symbol of romance, now stood as a silent witness to his downfall. The trial captivated audiences around the world, a gripping story of wealth, deception, and fatal violence. Courtrooms that once felt distant from the glamorous world of Dubai real estate became arenas of raw emotion and evidence. Prosecutors presented a meticulously detailed case, showing photographs of the injuries, forensic reports that contradicted his earlier claims, and testimony from resort staff who had witnessed the aftermath of that fateful night. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of premeditated control and unchecked rage, making it clear that the tragedy had been neither accidental nor spontaneous. The defense fought to frame the incident as a tragic mishap, suggesting that the storm and slippery surfaces had caused the fatal fall. But the argument faltered under the weight of medical reports, surveillance footage, and the bride's own journal, which described her growing fear and sense of danger. The jury listened intently as experts explained the sequence of events, how the injuries were inconsistent with an accidental fall, and how the timeline of his movements revealed deliberate actions to stage a cover-up. The public followed every detail, glued to live feeds and news articles that dissected the evidence and the personalities involved. As the trial progressed, the once powerful developer's reputation unraveled completely. His wealth and status could not shield him from accountability. The court delivered its verdict, guilty of murder. The sentence was life in prison, a consequence that stripped him of freedom, prestige, and influence. Outside the courthouse, the world reacted with shock, sympathy for the victim, and a renewed awareness of the hidden dangers behind seemingly perfect lives. The American bride, remembered for her warmth, ambition, and promise, finally received justice, though her life had been tragically cut short. The story of their honeymoon in Bora Bora became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that paradise can hide the darkest secrets, and that appearances, no matter how flawless, can be fatally deceiving.